Hi, good morning. This is Dr. Mark Sehl from the Psychotherapy channel, YouTube channel, Therapy for the Heart. It's good to be here today. I'm going to make a lot of mistakes because the title of this video is I'm Being Imperfect. So I've been away from the videos for a while, and the explanation for that will be evident as we go along with this talk. But this is 22nd talk in the series, What Makes for a Good Psychotherapy Session, and it is nice to be back, and I am still in full-time private practice. So, on Being Imperfect, the 22nd video, What Makes for a Good Psychotherapy Session. When people come to see me for therapy, they have various hopes and fears about this major event in their life. The fears usually involve anticipating being judged or misunderstood, or shame about being in the position of asking for help in the first place. Besides wishing to resolve some issue in their life, often patients have an expectation, conscious or unconscious, that therapy will rid them of anxieties and depressions forever. The world will be perfect. I was talking to two employees at Lenny's, where I go for coffee in the morning, Reham and Enrique's combined answer to the query about a perfect world was, what would you do tomorrow? Anxiety and depression are part of life. If we get disappointed or if we're close to someone, it also means we will be separated at some point, sometimes depressed, anxious. In other words, if we love, we get hurt at some point. That's inevitable. With perfection, there would be no pain. There would be deadness. No innovation, no creativity, problem solving. What's the sense with a perfect world? Makes no sense. It's nonsense. I have been working with someone who found me on the internet. I seem trustworthy, you never know, right? And kind, unlike her physically abusive mother, who would often beat her. She had an unusual desire to be curious about her anxiety and would grasp onto it, focus on it, and as a result would discover the very difficult memories of her past which she had kept from consciousness for years. How did remembering help her? It helped her see that she was blaming herself for the beatings as if she did something to deserve it, which is often what children do. They take it upon themselves because they can't. Their rational mind can't, or irrational mind can't perceive that the caregivers are the same ones who are beating them, so they blame themselves. She was also very grateful to find modern psychoanalysis because it helped her understand she was attacking herself to avoid feeling angry and the related grief at not being loved. Being able to bear pain made her inner world richer with the gathering of many memories, as painful as they were. And it's true, if you shut out pain, you also have to shut out the good memories that with the process of repression. So she had a richer world. Much of our daily activity is centered on avoiding conflict and discomfort, unlike this patient who embraced it. Whether listening to music, TV, or checking emails, which is what we do very often, one patient commented to me that it seemed like a conspiracy. There was so much pressure to check emails. Sometimes I ask patients to meditate. It is often very experienced as uncomfortable to be still for 5, 10, 15 minutes without distraction. Often it is sadness that they encounter, and they want to move away from it. Get up, turn on the TV, anything to avoid discomfort. Meditation is not something I suggest at the beginning of therapy. Avoidance of painful emotions is necessary often, and we learn that through looking at the videos, that we support defenses, not attack them. Too much sadness can be unbearable. Distraction is necessary as a means of avoidance of painful memories, which may take some time to unearth. So when I am advocating here, focusing on one's internal world, it's important to bear in mind this could come only after some time spent in therapy to build up one's strength to tolerate difficult feelings. About 5 months ago, I was assistant director of The Dancer, a play written by a friend and colleague, David Morgan. This was produced uptown at the Cabrini Rep Theater. Parallel to this focus on creativity, I began to paint again. That in turn brought me to the movie Andrei Rublev about the famous Russian icon painter, directed by Andrei Tarkovsky. Another movie, Frida, about Frida Kahlo, recommended to me by a good friend and fellow artist, and finally a book about Lucian Freud, recommended by the same friend. All these contributed to my reawakening of my creative impulses. The movie by Tarkovsky, in turn, brought me to a talk entitled Poet in the Cinema, where he talks about change and perfection in relation to life and art. Quoting him, "Some sort of pressure must exist. The artist exists because the world is not perfect. Art would be useless if the world were perfect, as man wouldn't look for harmony, but would simply live in it. Art is born out of an ill-designed world." End of quote. He talks to the youth of our country and encourages them to learn to live and to love solitude, live in solitude and to love it, and to learn to be more alone with yourselves. I have sketched and painted off and on for many years, but suddenly I started painting and drawing with a vengeance and have not stopped. There is a website now, artbymarksehl.com, now residing on the internet. And again, the focus and listening to Tarkovsky and watching these movies and reading about various painters really inspired me. I was inspired by the lives of these painters and by some sense of meaning or spirituality. I use that word in the broad context because I'm not a particularly religious person by any means, but it did give me some sense of purpose and making a contribution to the world that I didn't have before. I've been talking about perfection, but where does this drive for perfection come from? Often it starts at an early age. Child comes home from school. The first question it's asked is, how was your day, or just kind of joining the child and wherever they are at the moment. The first question often is, how did you do on your test? You got a B? What's wrong with you? And there you have it. What's wrong with you? This sets up some crazy idea in the child's mind that there's something wrong because they didn't get an A. Rather than something wrong with the parent or the caregiver who is scolding or ridiculing the child for not doing well. The child tries to be perfect to meet the crazy expectations of the caregiver. And that attempt goes on for a lifetime until that child does meet someone who can address what they're doing to themselves and to stop hurting themselves as a result of this crazy expectation that they were given by the people who were taking care of them and supposedly loving them. They were loving them, but that's not a way to love your child, by driving them nuts with expectations. Striving for perfection leads to anxiety, depression, stress on the body and mind, and in the worst case scenario, suicide. We don't really understand the impact of these expectations on our children. We're just beginning to. I've understood them for a long time because that's the focus of modern psychoanalysis. That's not the focus just of modern psychoanalysis, but they do give me a way to treat people unlike other therapies that I've experienced. Suicide is the second leading cause of death for college students. Earlier this year, a college student killed herself. Many college students killed themselves, but this was stuck out in my mind because of the comment one person made on the high pressure of the collegiate environment, and recalled the student saying she was not happy with the unrelenting load on her plate that she had to take care of every day by going to college. Unfortunate consequence, she killed herself. In the movie Black Swan by Aronofsky, Nina commits suicide, sacrificing herself to fulfill her mother's wish for a perfect performance. The mother wanted Nina to succeed and fail. How about that? So suicide, after a perfect performance, accomplished satisfying both things, meeting and defeating mother's expectations. Yes, we find this a lot in anorexia, for instance, where there's such control over how much the child, the adolescent, is going to eat or not eat. You know, one way to defeat the mother is to defeat her expectations by becoming sick. I worked with someone who told me the story of how he went along with his father's insistence in getting the perfect education, a PhD, but then spit on it after the end. One way to defeat the father where he couldn't stand up to the father. That's what we need to learn in life, is to be able to stand up for ourselves and to other people. Either one of those solutions, spitting on the at the degree or suicide, is not a good resolution to conflict because the person is either dead or destroys their own efforts. In either picture, suicide and self-destruction masks the hatred towards the object. The aim of modern psychoanalysis is to move the interjects is "I'm worthless, I'm a piece of shit," depression, from the ego into the external world. When children are expected to be perfect and on top of it subjugated under the power of unrelenting caregivers, the consequences are awful. Depression, despair, poor functioning in school, inability to have intimate relationships, that's a very common one. Post-traumatic stress disorder, and the list goes on and on and on. Check out talks 1, 2, 3 on the video series for further elaboration of the consequences of internalization of aggression. Also focus, when you're listening, on the Narcissistic Defense, which is a principal defense that modern analysis works with to overcome the attacks on the self, on the ego, and psychosomatic symptoms and thought confusion. So they're very interesting. I'm biased, but check them out again. Even if you've listened to them, listen to them again. In talk 2 on being imperfect, I will address how therapy helps with the problem many have of trying to be perfect at all costs. And I'll be delivering that talk in a few weeks. And so look for it. And I'm going to sign off for now. Thank you for listening. Without you, there wouldn't be any YouTube Therapy for the Heart. And if you have a Gmail account, you can sign up and make a comment on the YouTube channel on the different videos that I have. And I will respond if you make those comments, and I appreciate them. And if you can't, if you don't have a Gmail account, then you can always find me, Mark Sehl, on YouTube. On YouTube, just plug it in there, and you'll see all the videos. So thank you again for being here, and I appreciate your listening. And I have a little alarm to tell me to shut up. So I'm going to sign off for now. This is Dr. Mark Sehl, YouTube channel, Therapy for the Heart. Thank you.